Now, our next speakers are Kathleen and Mike Connolly. I met Mike through Kathleen. I realized from what she said he was an expert on cybersecurity, and all of us have concerns about privacy and safety in the electronic world. Mike loves the electronic world, but is also very knowledgeable about the security risks that may lurk there and how best to protect against them.
How y'all doing? So I'm going to be talking primarily about two things today. I'm going to be talking about basic computer hygiene and security, and then some privacy, online privacy issues. And so we'll cover both of those. It kind of dovetails into a lot of what Kathleen was talking about. I'm sorry. Dovetails into a lot of what Kathleen was talking about, and then some of the other stuff that we've heard today. So, let me give you a little background about me. I started doing computer stuff 30 years ago when I started at the University of Hawaii. Worked in the School of Ocean and Earth Science and Technology. Wanted to be a marine scientist, but I ended up running computer cables. Went to the aquarium, part of the university also. Did that for 10 years, again, doing marine science and doing IT stuff. Then I did some freelance consulting, and then I got a gig teaching computer science, not computer science, but computer classes, Microsoft, Cisco, and security classes. And then I got a gig doing that for the Air Force in the Pacific. I went to Japan and Korea and taught classes, and that dovetailed into my current job where I do architecture and engineering for classified networks. I have a master's in information science and also the CISSIP, the Certified Information Systems Security Professional, which is one of the capstone certifications for computer security. Now let me ask a little bit about you all, right? So we've talked about everyone's being a smartphone user, everyone has computers at home, show of hands, computers at home, sure? Okay, now I'm going to ask some more questions, but keep your hands down no matter what. How many of you have been ripped off online? How many of you have lost all your data at one point in time for one reason or another? Right? So again, keep your hands down. I'm sure lots of people have here, right? It's very common. So some of the things I'll talk about today will help with that and hopefully give you a little bit more information about how to protect yourself, protect your data, and basically be a useful use of computers. So first part is the computer security and hygiene. And what do I mean by that? So computer security is one thing, but hygiene is not something that people necessarily think about when you're talking about computers. And the idea there with hygiene is there are certain simple but important tasks that you have to kind of undertake when you're using your computer. And we'll talk about those in depth. But the first one I want to talk about as part of good computer hygiene is antivirus and anti-spyware. Right? Now, so you've probably heard of computer viruses and spyware, which is designed to take a peek at what you're doing, see your bank account information, that sort of thing. And so one of the things that you got to know is that it's important to protect yourself, and that takes some active participation in your part. Usually not too much actual effort, but you do have to be aware. What you're protecting yourself from is what they call malware, which is malicious software. And malware falls into a whole bunch of different categories, but the primary ones we talk about are viruses. And these could be destructive, or these could be non-destructive, or whatever they're doing, but they replicate through various different ways. Adware. One of the things that I see a lot on older folks' cell phones is you will have the ads that randomly pop up, and there's some application or some website you visited that has downloaded a piece of software that now forces ads on you, right? So you're always seeing these ads, and it can be really hard to figure out where they came from. Spyware is, again, what we talked about a little bit earlier. It's a software that's designed to take a peek at what you're doing, primarily for the purpose of looking for useful information. Social security numbers, bank account information, credit card information, that sort of thing. And then there's a new threat that I don't see a whole lot for individuals, but more of organizations, and that's called ransomware. You guys heard about this ransomware stuff? This is primarily a piece of malware that gets into your system and then encrypts your data, actually encrypts it. And then they extort you for money with some of these cryptocurrencies to give you the decryption key. And you've been seeing it hit universities and cities and different organizations like that. And they're willing to pay tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get their data back in some cases. And so that's obviously a more organized crime sort of thing, right? Even state-sponsored organized crime in some cases. So what do you do to defend yourself, right? Antivirus. Antivirus is the key to defending your computer against all of these threats. One of the things about antivirus is you have to make sure it stays updated. Now, there's a bunch of different vendors for antivirus. There's some that you might have heard of, like Norton or McAfee. There's all sorts of different vendors that sell antivirus. If you're an organization, you might use some of these third-party antivirus tools. But for the general home user, both Microsoft and Apple provide really good individual antivirus baked into the products. So for Microsoft, it's called Windows Defender, and that does antivirus, anti-spyware, some other things too. And the idea there with that is you don't have to do much. You just have to turn it on and allow it to auto-update, right? And there's some settings when you go into the Windows Defender on your computer. And as long as you get that green check mark, thumbs up, your antivirus is up to date, you're probably protected from the vast majority of these sorts of malware. The one for Apple is called XProtect, and it's the same idea. As long as it's allowed to update and keep those, what they call virus signatures up to date, it knows how to get rid of all the spyware. There's one for Android, which you don't see often, called Bitdefender. It's not built into the operating system. That's a third-party one. But if you're concerned about malware on your phone, Bitdefender is probably the most popular option right now. There's some other basic stuff you got to make sure that you have going in your home network for your home computer. Firewall. So what's a firewall? A firewall is basically a piece of software or a piece of hardware, it can be either, that limits the connections that are allowed to and from your computer and your home network. So a lot of times if you have a wireless access point at home that, I don't know, Spectrum gives you or HawaiiTel gives you, there could be firewall capability built into that. You want to make sure that's left on. Also, the operating systems have built-in firewall, and you want to make sure that's left on. Generally, it's safe to just let that manage itself, but again, one of the places you see this where it's a problem is if you, let's say, have a laptop computer and you go to the coffee shop, or you go to the airport, or you go to a public space and you're using public Wi-Fi, you can't necessarily guarantee that they're using firewalls that prevent some of these attacks. So you got to make sure that that firewall is on your individual device. A couple other things that are important here for your computers is patching both the operating system and the applications. Now, in general, Windows Update is the tool on Microsoft for doing the operating system updates. There's a similar tool on Apple that keeps it up to date. The most important thing is you let those run and update it. I get these little nag screens that say, oh, you haven't updated your software, you know, you have to reboot now. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll reboot now. But it's important to keep the operating system and the applications. So your Microsoft Office and stuff like that will be taken care of with the Microsoft update. But things like Adobe or, I don't know, TurboTax or any of these other applications you might have on your computer, it's important to update those too. Because a lot of the times the way this malware works is it will exploit flaws or vulnerabilities in the operating system, in the applications you're using. Next thing I want to talk about is backups, right? There's a bunch of different ways to do backups, but this is a great way to do a backup, right? This is a little thumb drive. This is a 128 gigabyte thumb drive. It's not giant. It's not super expensive. You guys have all seen these. But I leave this plugged into my laptop, not this particular one, but a similar one. Anytime I have my laptop at home and I have the operating system set to back up all of my critical files, my documents, my pictures, anything of that nature gets backed up to that. And then whenever I take my laptop anywhere, I unplug that thumb drive, I leave it on my desk, so if my laptop is stolen, or if it gets corrupted or dropped, or I dump coffee on it, or whatever happens, I've got my thumb drive with all my files on it and all my information. Another way you can do it besides having a local copy is some of these cloud services. So Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Apple, you guys have heard of the iCloud? You can back up your photos and stuff like that. That's another great way. The rule of thumb is you never ever want your data in just one place, right? Because it's too easy to have a hard drive die. It's too easy to have your laptop stolen. And again, the laptop getting stolen is bad, but all those pictures, all those files, all those documents, almost always worth more than the actual laptop is. So those are some things to think about when you do it. But again, for Macintosh, you can't go wrong with the iCloud, and the Microsoft has the OneDrive, and I think up to a certain point, X number of gigabytes, it's free, then you have to pay for additional storage. But those are great ways to make sure that your data is never lost. So, other thing I want to talk about here is passwords, and passwords are a huge hassle, right? And so it's really a pain, but it's super important to make sure that you're practicing good computer hygiene with your passwords. So what is a good password? A good password is not a word in any language, backwards or forwards. It's at least 8 characters with mixed uppercase, lowercase, punctuation, special characters. One of the things I like to say when I'm teaching security classes is consider it a passphrase. So I don't know if you can read that, but that says, I think soup is tasty. I don't think I can forget that. Now don't use that one. You can't use that one. But I'm saying something of that nature, where it's actually a sentence with some misspellings and some mixed characters and stuff like that, is almost impossible for someone to guess, almost impossible for a password hacker to crack, and hopefully it should be crazy enough that you can remember it easily, right? So something like that is a good idea, right? Here's another hard one. Don't reuse your passwords. And that's, if you use the same password for everywhere, here's the problem. Some websites, some applications maybe don't have the best security in them. And if a hacker breaks into that website and is able to get your password from that website and your username from that website, they could try all the other websites that you might go to. And the idea is that they use the same username and the same password on all the websites, because a lot of times the username is your email address. Then suddenly they can break into all of these otherwise secure websites, right? Your bank maybe, or I don't know, whatever else. But the idea is one compromised password on one website that's not doing a good job with their security could lead to a compromise on all the other websites. So there's ways you can do that. Maybe you think, I think soup is tasty, 68 is for one website, and 352, I think soup is tasty for another website. You add what they call a little salt, a little difference in the password each time, but hopefully you can kind of remember that pattern, and then that prevents that sort of attack where one compromised website could then be used to leverage your information to break into your stuff on other websites. Some other options that you don't see super often include stuff like two-factor authentication. So this is what they call an RSA token, and this is a little electronic device that has a 6-digit code on it, and I use this for the company website. And the idea is I need a username, I need a password, I need a PIN that's appended to this code, and then I'm able to access the website. Now, you're probably not going to get RSA tokens for most commercial stuff, although some companies are doing that. But there are things that are additional hardware security tokens. There's one called YubiKey, where websites can subscribe to the service. And if you have a YubiKey, it's a similar idea that you can then get into the website using that two-factor authentication. Biometrics is another one. Like you have the phone and you unlock it with your face. That's a form of biometrics. Now, if you just unlock it with your face, that's one-factor biometrics. In more complicated environments, you use the face or the fingerprint plus a username and password. So it's what you know, your username and password, and what you have or who you are for multi-factor authentication. So, like I say, not super common, but I think it's something we're all going to have to think about in the future, particularly these ones that are geared towards everyday home users as opposed to corporate users, like the UV key and stuff like that. So, again, when you're online, there's even more things to consider than if you're just using your computer at your house or just using your cell phone. And really, it's almost a misnomer to say online security, because really all security is more or less online now. I mean, we're all connected, all the devices are connected all the time. So the passwords, again, like we mentioned, should be unique for each site. And let's talk about phishing and social engineering. So here's a really, really tricky one. And you will find that almost all computer attacks on some level come out with they start with a phishing, a social engineering attack. And this is an email or some other correspondence, a text message that looks totally legitimate, but is in fact designed to either download malware onto your computer, or it's designed to get you to give up your malware, your username and password. So you might get an email from PayPal that says, "Hey, your account was compromised. Log into this website, change your username and password." But first you have to give us your old one, right? And so that's a phishing attack. So what it's designed to do is give up your credentials to this site. Some other things: too good to be true emails. You win. Send us your information. Send us your credit card. Send us your bank account. We're going to give you all the money that you won. Another one you see is emergency request for money. You know who this comes from?
Grandson.
Your grandson. Someone from you that you know. Someone from your address book, because your address book has been compromised. You didn't know it, and now you're going to get email from people you know asking for money. It's an emergency. I'm in the hospital. I'm in jail. But it's coming from someone you know, right? So that's really something dangerous. Bitcoin scams. I saw what you did on your computer. Send me the Bitcoin, or I'm going to send it to everyone that you know. Those are becoming common. 419 from the Nigerian criminal code. So I am Dr. Mogobu Nakuta. You are the winner of $1 billion. Send me your bank account information so I can get it to you, but I need $50 first to set up the wire transfer. Those sorts of things. Password reset scams, I talked about PayPal, and telephone tech support scams. Someone calls you up and says, "Hey, your computer's not working. I need you to download," this is Microsoft, "I need you to download this piece of software to fix your computer. And if you do so, then congratulations, you're compromised. They'll do whatever they want." So I have a thing here, don't click on the link, right? And the idea is, be skeptical, right? Really think twice about these links, because it's easy enough to have these website addresses that look similar enough, right? So Microsoft versus MicroSwift, right? If you saw that, you might notice that they changed the O to a Q, registered that domain name, and are now using it to do attacks on folks. Hidden links and scam emails, again, sometimes it'll look totally legitimate, but if you click on the link, it takes you to, again, a website that's going to do malicious things. Malware attachments, hey, you got to check out this cool dog picture, it's so cute. And in fact, it's not really a dog picture. And then, don't ever send money, gift cards, Western Union, bank account information over line. I mean, if you're working with your own bank, that's one thing, but otherwise. One last thing to talk about: social media. Set your feeds to private. If you do the Twitter, like Kathleen was talking about, make sure you don't accept random requests from people to follow you. When you do Facebook, make sure you limit it to your friends only. When you do any of these social media things, you don't want to be publicly viewable, because it's used to basically reconnoiter possible victims, right? So they'll look through all these empty or these open Facebook accounts, and they know that people who are not setting their feed to private probably are not paying attention to security. That's going to be a good target, possibly someone you could exploit. Only add people you know in the real world, right, to your accounts. So if you have random people, I wouldn't add them unless you know who they are. Avoid oversharing. And here's another one. The pictures that the phones and the cameras take now can include metadata. And by metadata, this is hidden information that you don't see when you're looking at the picture, but some of the scariest thing, it can be the time and date the picture was taken and the physical GPS coordinates. So it can tell someone who knows how to look at that data exactly where that picture was taken. So if you say, "Hey, look, I just got this great new car, it's in my garage," take a picture of it, And now thieves know, okay, I know exactly where that is. I'm going to plug that into the GPS and just drive right over there. That sort of thing. Identity theft is also a concern. Obviously, your identity is typically more important than your stuff, right? And so it's usually not you being targeted individually per se. It's usually what they do is they'll get information from websites, from here, from there, well, they'll have thousands of names, and they'll build up profiles. And they'll go to multiple websites. And again, if you're using the same password for each website, it allows them to build this profile that much quicker. Then finally, once they have enough information to individually identify somebody, so your location, because you took a picture of your car and you got the GPS coordinates, and now they know your address, your name, your bank account information, then they can really do some scams. And again, it's not you per se that they're targeting. It's just, I was able to gather enough information about this individual from here, here, and here. Now I have a profile. Now I can utilize that profile to do really bad things. So protect your personal information. It's more valuable than money. Social Security, driver's license, passport information, super important to protect. Credit card numbers are a frequent target. Again, you want to make sure that one of the things I always say is only use credit cards online, never use a debit card. Because if you're ripped off and it's a credit card transaction, you're not liable. The banks are liable, the websites are liable. If it's your debit card, it's still not your fault, but you have your bank account drained. And then you've got to now chase down the bad guys to try to get your cash back. And again, one of the other ways that's interesting is there are also illicit databases, right? So I don't know if you guys heard about this OPM hack, Office of Personnel Management. Hackers took tons of information, Social Security Administration hacks, et cetera, and the real power there that they have is by cross-listing all of these illicit and then public forms of information together to build up that profile in order to exploit you. So I have some additional resources here. One of the great ones is Department of Homeland Security has some stuff for older Americans. Again, a lot of the stuff I'm saying is not necessarily an older American thing. It's just simply good computer hygiene and security. Staying safe and secure online, AARP does some great stuff, and they have a bunch of really good information there. There's Connect Safely, which is an industry group. They have some good information. And here's another one that's really interesting. The Federal Trade Commission has authorized this one company, annualcreditreport.com. Every American can request a copy of their credit report once a year for free, right? And you go to that website, completely free, totally valid by the Federal Trade Commission. And the idea is it's good to keep an eye on. Have random credit cards been opened in your name that you didn't know about, right? Is there now some other bank information that's unknown, that sort of thing. And so the idea is going there, that freecreditreport.com lets you know if you've been victimized, even if you didn't know you were victimized. And then the FTC Bureau of Consumer Protection also has a bunch of resources to help you out with that. So again, some good websites to check out, and I know they're in the book there. And again, like I said, be skeptical, pay attention, don't overshare, good passwords, back up your stuff, keep your operating system and application patched, and you're really going to minimize the chance of being victimized or having unpleasant things happen online to you. Okay, thanks.